In 1912, Kelvin Technical High School opened its doors for the first time in Winnipeg's South End. For several years, the city had been in pressing need of another secondary school to educate its growing population. It was the first school in Western Canada that aimed to provide a general technical course in conjunction with a secondary education. Designed in a Georgian revival style, the school was built of white stone and red brick. It also had a 100-foot-high ornamental tower. It was named after Lord Kelvin, a famous British mathematician and physicist who had been instrumental in the laying of the transatlantic cables. When classes began on January 1st, there were 775 students and 33 teachers on staff. The first principal was D.M. Duncan. He had come from La Vérendrye School, along with many of Kelvin's first students, one of whom was Ewart H. Morgan, who explored the building on his first day. He remembered, "We were like Little Red Riding Hood. What spacious halls it had, and an auditorium with a real stage, and the science room with gas and electricity, and a gymnasium, and the household arts room. And what a variety of shops! To us who had been educated on books alone, it all seemed most extraordinary and impossible." Kelvin's students went to and from the school in different ways. A trolley line ran between Ash on Academy and City Hall to offer transportation for the school's students who lived in Winnipeg's downtown. But many either walked to school or rode their bicycles. At Kelvin, the boys and girls were placed in separate rooms. They also used different staircases. Still influenced by Victorian fashion, the girls normally wore long serge skirts, blouses, and high-button boots. Some of the boys continued to wear knickerbockers. However, most of the boys wore long trousers, considered a symbol of manhood. Quickly, the staff and students adopted several traditions. They agreed that those who managed to secure a spot on a school sports team should receive a large block K of a uniform size. They decided that Kelvin's motto would be courage, truth, right. The school chose cherry and gray as its official colors. Mr. Fanshawe, a respected Kelvin art teacher, said of these colors, "The rich red expresses all those warm human sympathies we admire. The cool blue-gray symbolizes the calm judgment of an educated mind." As a student, Doris Saunders had just those qualities. After she graduated, Saunders studied at Oxford University, and she became the first female appointed to the University of Manitoba's Department of English. Later, she was the first woman to receive a full professorship in the Faculty of Arts at the university. Martha Ostenso and Elizabeth Defoe were also women of letters at Kelvin. Ostenso gained national fame with the publication of her book Wild Geese. Defoe was the University of Manitoba's long-time chief librarian and served as president of the Canadian Library Association. Although the growth of the intellect was encouraged, the school also wanted students to develop their bodies. Kelvin had hockey, rugby, soccer, lacrosse, curling, and track teams. Frank Fredrickson played on Kelvin's first boys hockey team. After he graduated, he captained the Winnipeg Falcons to win the Allen Cup. In the same year, he won Olympic gold in Antwerp and was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Fredrickson, like many of Kelvin's early graduates, volunteered to fight overseas during the First World War, as did Kelvin's first principal. In 1918, when the war ended, 527 former students had served their country. 55 of them had died. The students who survived the war returned to a tumultuous city divided by social, political, and economic forces. When 30,000 workers walked off their jobs during the 1919 general strike, Winnipeg and Kelvin High School were impacted. Transportation to the school was terminated. The regular police refused to work, so the Cameron Highlanders used the school as their headquarters. Some Kelvin students volunteered to work for the fire brigade. In the same year as the strike, Sir Charles Goodeve graduated from the school. He was a chemist and a pioneer in operations research. During World War II, his work was instrumental in helping the British develop an anti-submarine weapon. But he also created a method to protect ships from naval mines. He is the only Kelvin student to be knighted. Gerald Riddell was also at Kelvin in this era of social upheaval. As editor of the first yearbook, he wrote, "Let us make Kelvin the meeting ground for all classes on equal footing. If we wish, we may establish a tradition that students of Kelvin rank according to their personality and not their social status." Riddell went on to work for the External Affairs Department in Ottawa. In 1950, he became Canada's permanent delegate to the United Nations. James Coyne and Robert Beattie also worked in Ottawa after Kelvin. Both finished grades 10 and 11 in 1 year and went on to win Rhodes Scholarships. In the 1950s, Coyne became the Bank of Canada's second governor. Beatty was appointed the bank's deputy governor. Both men had left Kelvin before teacher Percy Padwick's career started to flourish. In 1927, Padwick took over the school's orchestra. One student remembered, "Every Wednesday evening, Mr. Padwick keeps time with the orchestra, with his baton and charming personality. He urges Ruth Wally not to be frightened to hit the drum, and coaxes the cornet to try to keep in tune." The well-respected Padwick went on to establish the Western Canada Junior Symphony Orchestra, which performed concerts on CKY radio for a national audience. The Kelvin sports teams at this time, like Padwick's orchestra, were always in tune. In 1928, 8 different teams won inter-high championships, including the boys' hockey team. For 5 straight years, these talented young men brought back to the school the inter-high hockey trophy. Marshall McLuhan, who played hockey on his class team, would likely have watched these boys in action. After Kelvin, McLuhan gained international fame for his work in the study of media theory. The intellectual offered the world such expressions as "the medium is the message" and "the global village." He also foresaw the development of the internet several decades before it was invented. If McLuhan was a pioneer for media theory, Beatrice York was Kelvin's political pioneer. In 1929, she was elected the first female student president. Her achievement had one student so distraught that he wrote, "We wandered home that night, dazed and subdued, for the impossible had taken place. The girls had united to obtain a lady president." The school had another first this year. The Girls' Glee Club competed in the music festival. One of its members reflected, "In the hope of becoming great operatic singers, many of us joined the Glee Club. Or perhaps we were just taking lessons in warbling. Already we have tested the microphone in the Hudson Bay store, and we think our invisible audience at least endured us." During the Great Depression, the Kelvin student body continued to grow. In 1931, there were 1,256 students at the school. Some of them came to the school as early as 7 in the morning because they had no heat in their homes. Meanwhile, the school provided a diverse range of evening classes for post-high school teenagers who could not find work. Likely as a consequence of these dire economic times, the Kelvin girls began wearing an official uniform. They wore white blouses, neckties, black tunics which often displayed the school crest, and long black stockings. The boys wore dark trousers and usually a pull-on sweater. For more formal occasions, they wore a white shirt, tie, and a jacket. Duff Roblin was dressed in such attire at the school. After Kelvin, Roblin became Manitoba's 14th premier. He was responsible for the construction of the Red River floodway, and in 2008, Manitoba's citizens named Roblin the greatest Manitoban. After a quarter century, Kelvin had produced several notable graduates such as Roblin. In 1937, some of them returned to the school for the 25th anniversary. They were joined by another 1,000 alumni who participated in the open house festivities to celebrate the school's young but already rich history. Doris Saunders was one of these grads. When asked what Kelvin meant to her, she told the current students, "Is not one's old school very like a fascinating book? Completely absorbing while we are experiencing it, when finished seldom reopened, yet remembered with intense pleasure. Its characters are our friends, and though its words may be forgotten, yet its wisdom has become a part of us."